In this video, I will be walking you through how to authenticate to your Salesforce instance and sync your non-Azure AD identities to your Azure AD identities so the proper security trimmings can be applied to your Salesforce items. After you have chosen to add a new Salesforce connector and have named the connection, you will land on the connection settings page. Please be sure to contact your Salesforce admin to ensure you have the right credentials when authenticating to your instance, since you must log in with the Salesforce admin credentials. It would also be useful to understand how users are set up within your Salesforce instance before you begin this process so that you can make the best choice on how to sync your Salesforce users to your Azure AD users. Once you've done that, you should be ready to go. The first field you must provide is your Salesforce instance URL. You can find this URL by logging into your Salesforce account and then navigating to Settings, Company Settings, My Domain. Copy and paste the current My Domain URL. Make sure to append this URL with the HTTPS to start. Then you can copy and paste the client ID and client secret in order to authenticate to your Salesforce instance. The connection was successful. Now you can select what types of Salesforce items you want to ingest. Let's ingest opportunities. On the Select Permissions screen, you can select what types of Salesforce users you have set up so that you can provide the appropriate mapping rules to sync your identities. Select AAD if you have set up SSO for Salesforce through the Azure AD portal. Then you can provide a mapping from the Azure AD properties to your Salesforce Federation identifier. Select non-AAD if you have a third-party identity provider like Okta or Ping Identity. In our case, we will select non-AAD. On this screen, you can provide the mapping rules to sync your identities. The first step asks you to select the Azure AD property you want to create the mapping to. If you want to find out what the AAD ID and user principal name is for users in your organization, then you can go to Graph Explorer, sign in, and then you can get your profile. This is the user principal name, and this is your AAD ID. We will select user principal name because I know I can map users' first and last names to their UPNs. The next step asks you to select the non-Azure AD properties or Salesforce user properties that you want to use to map to the Azure AD property you selected in step 1. In our case, we will select 2 properties, first name and last name. Here you can provide a regular expression to get a substring of the user identity property selected. Since I want the entire property for both first and last name, I will put .* in both places. In the last step, you can create the formula to complete the mapping. You must use a certain syntax. Bracket 0 is the output of the regular expression applied to user identity property 1. Bracket 1 is the output of the regular expression applied to user identity property 2, and so on. This formula is essentially a concatenation of the strings you provide and the outputs of expressions applied to user identity properties. In our case, I know the UPN is formed by concatenating first name, last name, and the domain. My formula is therefore bracket 0 dot bracket 1 at fabricamms.onmicrosoft.com, which is the domain. You can refer to our documentation for more examples and details regarding writing regular expressions and creating formulas. Then you can click the preview to see a random sample of user records and mappings. It is okay if you don't get all successes and get some failures, since we are only showing a small subset of users. This takes us to the end of the tutorial on how to apply user mapping to sync your Salesforce identities to Azure AD identities. I hope you found this useful.